Points.
Welcome to another episode of the Broad Points Podcast. I am your host, the broad that points, the broad with the points. It's me, Tyler, the lady. And this week on the Broad Points Podcast, I am very excited to introduce to you an old friend, a former student with me at the IPEC, the Institute of Professional Excellence in Coaching. Her name is Marisol Camacho. And Marisol is an ICF certified PCC level, which means she has over 1,000 hours of coaching underneath of her belt these days. She's an ELI-MP. She's a trauma-informed facilitator, and she is a creative entrepreneur. And you guys, I have to say, I have known Marisol for the last few years, and it has been so exciting to know her and to see her journey. And I'm so excited to have her here on the podcast to share her knowledge with you. So with that, Marisol, how are you today?
First, I want to say buenos dias to your audience. I'm doing really well. I'm currently right now in Seattle, Washington, and I'm adjusting to the fall mornings. It's like definitely darker and crisper when you wake up at this time.
Yes, yes. I was just up in Washington a couple of weeks ago as it became fall and that crisp morning air like filling your lungs. It's beautiful. It takes a little adjusting for maybe the rest of your body and nervous system, but oh, my lungs love it.
I appreciate it. However, if there's anything, even though I was born and raised here, that I've learned since leaving is I'm a sun baby. Like I want to wake up to the sun.
Yes, I completely understand that. I mean, I moved to the desert, almost 4 years ago now, and I just love the sun every morning to wake up with it, to feel my circadian rhythm kick in and just know I feel like I'm in the right place. It's a different mind state, a different beast, one may say, than Washington and the Pacific Northwest.
It's crazy. And speaking on just like circadian rhythm and like adjusting, I was born and raised in Washington, right? I spent about 19 years of my life here, and I've been away for about 9 years. And just like once I left and understood what life could be like with daily sunshine, that like daily natural vitamin D, I was like, we cannot go back. This is a
Yeah.
staple. This is a necessity in my life.
Yeah, the happy lamps aren't cutting it anymore. I need the real deal.
Exactly.
Oh, exactly. So, Marisol, tell me, I know your titles have changed over the year and we had quite a few there that I introduced you with. So, tell me and tell my listeners a little bit about your background and what you're focusing your energy on these days.
Yeah. Wonderful. Okay. So, what year do you want me to start in?
Wherever you feel appropriate. This podcast isn't necessarily in chronological order.
Okay, great. I will start from the time that you met me, which was, okay, think back to 2020. This is pandemic time. And I found myself in mod one of our IPEC certified coach training, right? Um, so before that, I was working in tech and I burnt out really bad in San Francisco. So I lived in San Francisco about 5 years, burned out really bad, came back to Washington right before the pandemic hit, which just seemed to be like lucky timing because San Francisco kind of got a little shaky. It just really changed during the pandemic, right? Um, Finally had time to pursue what I always had wanted to do of becoming a certified yoga teacher, which I am also a certified yoga teacher, although I don't actively teach. And then COVID hit, and then that made me realize, like, oh, you know what? I don't think the way that like I want to help people realize they have the power to change their lives is actually through like physical movement, like through yoga. Like there's something about this while fulfilling, it's just not really giving me what I want, right? So I set out on this mission to ask people around me, what's a job or career that I can have where I can help people to realize they have the power to change their lives without being a therapist, right? Because traditionally I had only been taught that like you go to therapy to heal, and then when you heal, you can change your life, right? And as someone who had a really hard time, honestly, on my journey finding a therapist that really jived with me, which I'm happy to get into like as we go along this journey of my story. I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. And I don't know if I want to put myself in debt that much, right? Because making the financial commitment to be a therapist in the United States is quite grand. We're talking like hundred thousands of dollars in debt. And the license, it's just all that, that was just not something that I was sure at that time that I wanted to do. So I just had this feeling in my heart, okay, I'm gonna find the career where I can help people realize they have the power to change their lives without having to go to school to be a therapist. And I just said it to everyone that I knew. Like, this is what I really want to do. Like, this is the why behind what I want to do. And then finally, I had actually a yoga mentor of mine who's like my mom now, who introduced me to a longtime friend of hers who actually went to IPEC. And I just had a phone call with her, and she explained to me IPEC and how we're thinking about the seven levels of energy. They correspond to like, the seven chakras. A lot of esoteric knowledge is wrapped up in there. And it was just for me, I was like, okay, cool. So I'm going to go through the certification program that's going to give me the language to talk about energy in a more tangible, practical way, right? And for me, that was it. I didn't even know what coaching was. I had never been coached, and here I was like agreeing to sign up for like a $10,000 like certification program, and I had no clue what it was to be a coach. I didn't know what coaching was. I had never been coached, but I just asked the universe to give me signs. And at this point in time, I was working part-time at Lululemon in retail. Love working at Lululemon, by the way. It's such a great company to work for if you're looking for like a part-time, in between thing. And there was this woman who came into the store, and they were like a professional training coach, but then they also shared with me they were a coach. And I was like, oh, where did you go to coaching school? And they were like, IPEC. And I was like, oh, I'm actually considering that. And she was like, yes, you should do it. Know that coaching, though, at a professional level, like at that point in time, she was like, it's probably going to be a part-time thing. So if you have yoga or something else to supplement the income, it's great, but I highly recommend the program. So I finally was like, okay, even though I don't know what coaching is, like being a life coach is, and I've never had one, it seems like this is a path that I'm supposed to take. And that's how I met you in Mod 1. And I actually remember last call of Mod 1, I was on yeah, I was on one of our practice calls with our mutual, acquaintance, and it was one of the last calls of the day. And I remember just like crying at that last call because I finally felt like, oh my God, I found it. Like, this is it. Like, this is the skill set career that I had been looking for. And I remember everyone asked me, are you sure you haven't done this before? And I was like, I'm positive I've never done this in a formal manner before. But it just felt so good to finally have those answers after what felt like, wow. I mean, so if COVID hit in like February, so that's February, March, May, June, July, August, September, October, November. That's 9 months of me being just like on this mission of like, what am I going to do as a career that's aligned to me, that makes me feel passionate, that makes me feel connected, that brings me joy, and like also supports me in living a really like grounded life and, supports me. I think that's like, and brings me that financial stability that supports me. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really think that honestly, hearing your story, we have so much crossover. And so it's really easy to see how we were able to connect through Mod 1 and how we found IPEC is really cool. I didn't realize that you had known and heard from several people about IPEC. So that's a really fun fact to hear. Um, and then, yeah, just trying to find something else other than therapy, other than telling people, for me, something was wrong with them and then B, that I knew how to fix it. Like those two things to me just always just kind of blew my mind because I have always believed that every single person on this planet, like they have the answers. The answers exist within them, and it really is about empowering them to be able to find it for themselves. And so I too, I had no experience with coaching. I had never been coached before either. And then people are like, wow, you're really good at asking questions. So, yeah, it's definitely a really fun experience. I do think it was a very emotional experience going through school. I know I shed a lot of tears. I mean, we practice through ourselves, right? We practice through our peers, and you're able to just gain so much understanding. It feels like in such a short period of time, like school just felt like it just flew by. It was incredible. So since IPEC, what has coaching helped you with?
Oh my. So let's just say that post-graduating IPEC, I immediately, even before I graduated IPEC, I had like coaching roles with as a contract coach with organizations that were working with like marginalized populations, helping them find job opportunities. And my whole thing was we spend so much of our time at work. You might as well do something that you love, right? You might as well do something you're passionate about. Like you're gonna spend, think about it, 40 hours a week. That's like at the end of the day, that's like a quarter of your life. I think it's more. And you're gonna do like spend time doing something that you don't love. Like, what's up with that? So I started off into career coaching. And as I got into the nitty-gritty of career coaching, I was really lucky to have mentors and people take me onto their practices. And honestly, I've just been really fortunate with all the mentorship and guidance that I've received along my path. I realize that so many people, and this is going to sound taboo, so I'm going to explain it. So many people who came to career coaching had a significant level of trauma. And so, trauma, as I want to explain it to people, because whenever I say trauma, people usually get the heebie-jeebies. Trauma is things that leave an impact on your nervous system. They tell the nervous system, I'm not safe. And here's the thing. Anything can do that. It can be a significant life event, like when I was younger, my mom died, or it can be a friend of yours when you were in middle school saying something to you that like was mean and really hurt your feelings. So this is not about our conscious perception. It's really about how did your body interpret an event, and did it say this is a threat to my safety or not, and how did it store that information? So as I was career coaching people, I realized like what I was really doing was helping them process a lot of significant trauma that they were really holding on to that was impacting how they viewed the world. So, and along that timeline, I like got a divorce. I was like, it was just like a whole lot of things are happening in my world for my own healing. But also, I was like, okay, and then I'm like facilitating all this other healing. And so I was kind of like, I need to put the brakes on coaching for a bit in terms of my private practice. Like, luckily for me, because I had started off so strong out of coaching school, like I had a coaching job and I was like living in Mexico at the time. So it was easy for me to be like, okay, I just need to put a pause on my personal practice. And like, I'm going to do my job of coaching. And I'm going to start focusing on just me a bit more and my healing and finding a program that can support me in feeling ethical and helping my clients basically heal their own trauma in a way that's an integrity for me and for them. And that's what led me to finding my trauma-informed facilitation program. So it's with the Safe Space Institute, unfortunately. Um, they no longer run the program, but because Melissa Lapides returned to like grassroots therapy, she returned to being a therapist. She left the online coaching space due to some ethical things that were not sitting right with her. However, that program literally changed my life. When I say the first 4 months of that program were solely dedicated to my own healing and healing my trauma, because how are you going to help someone else heal their trauma if you can't even look at yours? And then it was really focused on facilitating safe space for people to heal a lot of somatics, understanding really just like on a more, I would say like scientific level, like, nervous system, how it affects us. And it just was really, it was that missing piece that, like of the knowledge. And I think, being in that container and being in a safe space really helped me to understand, like, and it's been a journey, like, but as someone who identifies as having complex childhood trauma, how much that was affecting the way I was showing up in the world and how much I had no idea because there was no therapist. There was no one I had met yet that was able to call it out and really be like, these are highly advanced coping mechanisms. You have experienced complex trauma and you've experienced like complex childhood trauma. And that's like why my therapist, Melissa Lapidus, who I trained with, who I worked with, really has helped me and helped me to change my life by just sitting and holding the space for me to heal, but also for me to come to these really big conclusions on my own. So since IPEC, I've been in a realm of deep, deep healing and coming to deep acceptance of the fact that like I am an individual who has experienced complex trauma. And when you have complex trauma, you see, feel, and perceive the world differently. And for me, it's not a, it's just a very much so I honor my need to move at my own pace. I honor my need to move slower, and I honor the fact that I am different in the way that I feel and perceive the world and relate to people, and not putting a judgment on it. I just got to move a lot slower than other people because essentially, like what I've been in the thick of this past year is breaking that like addiction to living in like fight trauma response, which is basically like my body being on adrenaline all the time. So, what I found though is the more I've come at peace with my journey and accepted myself, the more I've had clients come into my space who are also individuals who've experienced complex childhood trauma, but never had the language for it, and working with them to really identify their needs, identify, the different types of trauma responses they experience, and help them realize that like it's okay to rest. It's been really fulfilling, but the biggest key to that work was me really making peace with myself and my experiences that led me to be this individual.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it really sounds like, you've taken the time, right? With trauma, no one wins the pain Olympics. There's no like one-upping to like my trauma's worse than your trauma. Like trauma is trauma. It doesn't matter how it was received, it doesn't matter where it was received. It can be something that sticks with us. And like you said, we can not even realize it. I think in this society, right, currently, there's a lot of dissociation. There's a lot of numbing, there's a lot of detachment where people don't want to deal with it, or people just don't deal with it because they come from a line of people who didn't deal with it. So, to find that balance and to hear that you then went into this, there's a different gestation period for everyone. It's going to take everyone a different amount of time. And for you just to find that you wanted that space and you took it, like that is really inspiring, because we can sit and we can hide ourselves in the mud and just keep our whole brain turned off to the entire world around us, or we really can search deep for that inner standing, right? So with that, what inspired this move to Mexico? Because I know that you said
Yeah.
you're going to be bouncing back.
Yeah. So I'm actually a double citizen now. Woohoo! I have two passports. I have my Mexican passport and my American passport, which has honestly just been such a blessing. And I'm so grateful. And I think, talking about what you're signaling to is ancestral lineage and those patterns that it influences us of. I
Mhm.
realize that, my ancestors, as someone who identifies as my dad's a first generation immigrant from Mexico and like his family and learning about my lineage, my ancestors suffered for me to have the privilege to live this life, right?
Mhm.
Which is a whole conversation that could be its own podcast of its own. But so I was in Orange County, California, and everything really was just coming to a head of I realized the relationship that I was in at that time. I was being gaslit and manipulated and just it was a codependent, toxic relationship. I don't want to speak too negatively on my counterpart because it's two people in that dynamic, right? But it basically was just like an aha moment of like, my life will continue to look really beautiful paper, but will feel empty if I don't do something different. So that's ultimately what led me to deciding to, get separated and then wait to get, a divorce at some time because you have to wait. But well, essentially what happened is I just actually had gone on vacation to Mexico to see a friend of mine, and I'd seen my family. It had been like almost 10 years since I had been to like Mexico like properly, because I don't consider going to like Tulum or like Puerto Vallarta like visiting Mexico. Like that's for me, that's like not Mexico. Like when I say I'm
Totally.
visiting Mexico, like okay, I'm going to Mexico City, like I'm going to Toluca, like I'm going like a place where I live, like Malinalco, like I'm with the people. And it was interesting. I had gone on that vacation, had my world rocked, by the way, spiritually significant. Like my last night there was like 8/8. And I came back early in the morning on 8/9. And it was just kind of like I can't continue living my life the way that I have. Like I can't continue entertaining this illusion that like this is the relationship I'm supposed to be in, this is the life I'm supposed to live, because it's not, which was really hard, obviously. And like I had my own process of going through it. But when finally it was like really cards on the table of like, we're not gonna try and make this work anymore. We're gonna go our separate ways. I was like, what am I gonna do? And as scary as it was, everything in my body and my heart was like, you're moving to Mexico. And I was like, but what do you mean? And it was just like, you're moving to Mexico. And I was like, but what do you mean? Like that's like a whole different, I don't even like speak Spanish that well. Like um but yeah, within literally that trip happened in August, and on 10/10 of October, I was like in the LAX airport, like crying on the phone with one of my like long-term friends. Um and then yeah, that started Mexico. And Mexico is truly a place where genuinely it's home in my heart. Like it's intense, it's beautiful, it's complex, it's a dichotomy, but every time I'm away from Mexico, I can't wait to get back home, because that's the first place I think in my life where I felt that sensation of like, this is my home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it really sounds like you found your piece on this journey. Your piece of the world, your piece of the pie, and your peace of mind. And it by no means sounds like an easy journey. No one's journey is an easy journey. We're all put through these trials and tribulations. And something that I've told my listeners before is that courage pairs so well with fear. Like when that fear is bubbling up within you like a fine wine, you need that cheese to go with it. And courage just pairs so perfectly with it. And it's really exciting to hear that you chose yourself. You chose to protect your peace of mind. And to me, it also sounds like, you were enforcing some boundaries of yours. You had reached a limit, and you're like, I've had enough. And you chose yourself. So, and I've noticed some of your posts recently have been about boundaries. So I want to check in with you here. What do boundaries mean to you?
Yes, boundaries for me are all about protecting my peace, right? And when we think about protecting our peace, it's about protecting the things that we know that we need on a fundamental level, to keep ourselves safe.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's really what it comes down to. And here's the thing, like if we want to take it to a deeper level of, when I state my needs, when I say the things that I need to keep myself safe, I also am keeping you safe, because we are not separate. We are the same. So by
Yes.
keeping myself safe, I also keep everyone else around me safe.
Absolutely. And that's such a noble way to look at it too, because if we even if like we refer to the Bible, right, and we're all have a piece of God within us, people like to get religious these days. We are all connected. There is an inner working, whether you're religious or not, to where we can help each other. Like it is a community. We are all connected, whether we want to see it or not. Whether you're in Washington and they have that Seattle freeze up there where everybody just kind of like turns their head and like looks away. It's so real, dude. It is so real. When I go back, I always have to remind myself, oh yeah, not everybody wants to talk. Not everybody.
Yeah, no, literally. I was on the waterfront at like Ruston the other day and someone stopped to talk to me and my dogs and they were like, "Are you from here? Because you're very like sociable." I was like, "Born and raised in Federal Way, but I left and my parents were from California and like I've been in California and Mexico since then." So yeah, the freeze has worn off of me. But also I've always just felt like my personality is very warm and I'm very friendly and I love to smile and I love to laugh. And that like doesn't really fit in with the aesthetic of Washington.
No, it really is more of a doom and gloom aesthetic. It's funny down here, the people when they talk about Seattle, they're like, "Oh yeah, you guys have a lot of goths up there, right?" Because people wear black all the time. I was like, I guess you could say that. I guess there might be a decent emo goth population still in Washington. I don't know.
I think as someone who has been like dating up here again, and like I would just say it's a very particular type of person who can like withstand this type of weather for like over 30 years.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally get it. I totally get it. We have our boundaries with weather, right? There's only so much we can take.
I have my needs. I need sun.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And, it's also been really exciting to see how you've incorporated energy leadership into your posts. How do you feel about talking about energy leadership?
Here we go. What do we want to know?
Tell me your perspective. Tell me how, you've been able to apply this or how you've been able to share energy leadership with your clients, with your friends, with your family.
Yeah. So, fun fact, I actually did not get into the ELI until late last year. And the reason for that was because like I knew the ELI, the Energy Leadership Index Assessment, and I knew its power, but like I didn't really understand it. And as someone who identifies as being neurodivergent, like I have ADHD, if I don't understand the full why or purpose behind something, it's really hard for me to get behind it. Okay. So I actually did a ELI intensive. So it's an interplay project with Julie Armet, who's also an iPad coach. And wow. That was amazing. Not only did it dive into every level, but we learned about how the energies like play with each other. We learned like all the different types of emotions and verbs that can be described at each level. Like we did mirroring and we would listen to people talk and identify the energy levels that they were presenting. We reflected on ourselves. It was just an amazing, amazing experience that did allow the people that were in it with me to not only understand the ELI and energy and how they interplay together on a deeper level, but also facilitated in understanding ourselves even more, right? So I like to describe the Energy Leadership Index assessment as an attitudinal assessment that basically helps you see how you're perceiving the world, right? And for me, from my perspective, your experiences in life, cough, cough, your trauma highly influence that. So basically for me and like my private clients or even just clients that I work with, I don't always talk about it that way, but the ELI is a good way to put a quantifiable measurement on how much our past experiences that have created beliefs impacting the way you see and relate and navigate the world.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. That's a great summation, I feel like, of energy leadership. And I don't know about you, but when the index was first introduced to me, it was a little bit strange because I had never been told that I could view things from different perspectives, let alone seven different perspectives. So that just kind of like broke my brain for a minute. But ever since then, I mean, for me personally, just to have the options, just to know that like everything can be perceived from any sort of vantage point and we have the option to choose. It just felt like it gave me so much freedom. It gave me so much power and control over, I'm a very emotional being. I'm a highly sensitive, empathic being. I sense a lot of stuff that honestly sometimes I have to check with myself of like, is this mine? Is this from my life? Am I encountering this right now, or is this someone else's? And so again, to take that time to step back and to get that eagle eye perspective to where then you're like, oh, wait, I could be the victim, or this problem could not even exist. It's just so liberating to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. As someone who tended to actually stay in like, I'd say three, four, five, six, and seven, but three was really coming from just all of the mechanisms that I developed over time because of the amount of trauma that I've experienced in my life. Um, so despite leaving a codependent toxic relationship very quickly, I found myself in another one because patterns do not change until you take the time to change them, my friends. And even those of us who are as aware as possible still are subject to falling into that. Um, Earlier this year, my last relationship ended pretty pretty intensely. And it was not only just like psychologically abusive, but it actually took like physical abuse to get me out. And I speak to this because I think it's really important that people understand you can be the successful, smart, like everything on paper, right? But like there are a lot of women like me who have found themselves in that situation. And you're like, whoa, what the hell? But that was like my wake up call. And that I think was the first time that I gave myself permission to really hang out in level one, which is, being a victim, and level two of being upset about what happened.
Hmm.
And really hanging out in that space and allowing myself to like be a victim of like, that's not fair that that happened to me, but also just like the experiences that brought up like by navigating that system in Mexico, which is like very different and seeing how many other women are in these environments but don't necessarily have the resources to get themselves out. Like it was a lot of emotion and then being angry, but also being angry at myself because I think, a lot of people probably won't understand this, but I would say I experienced domestic violence. I won't want to call myself a victim because looking back, while it was not fair, and I don't think that's okay, and I don't think that's okay for anyone to treat anyone that way, I take responsibility for my participation in enabling that, that dynamic to play out. And that for me, taking my responsibility and doing my part in healing is really what gets you out of it, is gets you out of understanding like, it takes two to tango. As sobering as that truth is, like it really does take two. And until you look at your part of what had you stay in a situation like that, you're just going to keep repeating it. And so for me, a big portion of this year has been hanging out and processing all those heavy level one, level two emotions, being angry, being depressed, you know, um, coming to terms with my high highs and my low lows. And even also at the same time though, like there's still the place for my like five, which is like life is beautiful and there's an opportunity to learn everything and everything, right? But it's holding the space for both that has really helped me. And truly, I feel like now I really actually authentically am resonating at, a five, six, seven, which we think about it. I'm resonating at the levels of opportunity, joy, transformation without that underlying baggage that I used to have with like resonating at a three, which is basically just like tolerance. But also just learning how to healthily choose, like, you know what, this situation actually pissed me the fuck off. I don't know if I can cuss on your podcast.
You
Sorry.
absolutely can.
Um, yeah, okay, great. Yeah, this situation pissed me the fuck off. Okay, I'm gonna intentionally just be angry and allow myself to be angry for as long as I need. Or, wow, my feelings are really hurt right now. Okay, I want to be sad. I need to cry, or I just need to like voice and like reschedule my day and be like, I need space to be sad. And I think that that really comes into what I'm really big with my clients on is just like feeling what you need to feel in the moment and giving yourself what you need.
Yes. Yes, I could not agree more wholeheartedly with that sentiment because there is a generation of people who have just shoved stuff down and like compartmentalized that like they are dealing with things in such a harder way now because they can't even figure out where it came from. And so to, feel what's happening in the moment and really allow yourself that time, it's okay to feel like a victim for a minute. It's okay to sit in that. And then for me, what really made an impact was that level two of fighting for yourself. Like I was so down, like abusive relationships, unfortunately, they are very common. I mean, I have endured one. I've told my listeners before about my past relationship where I wasn't even allowed to leave the house. I wasn't even allowed to see my own mother. And so it's like, we're all experiencing this and no one knows unless one, we acknowledge it and we bring awareness to it. And then we decide to fight for ourselves. We have to decide that we want to leave that. And it really is, putting energy into our desired lives and our safety, to a certain point. And so, the other thing too is like that level of responsibility in a relationship. It's 100%, 100%. You have 200%. And so like we do have to take the responsibility of why we're there, how long we've stayed there, but it's all decisions. And, you mentioned the lack of judgment, which I feel is so crucial for all these things because ooh, I mean, how many freaking judgment shows are there these days? Like everything is a competition. Everybody has to be better than something else. And there's so much judgment just peppered on everything. And, to separate yourself and just say, hey, I don't have to be anything, but this can be what it is. This can be what happened. How do I feel about it? Just gives people the opportunity to grow and really know what do you need for self-care in those moments? What do you need to get you through? And, I on this podcast, we like to share a little thing that we call a fundamental phrase. It is like a mantra. It's something to help get you through. It's something to help shift your perspective. And so I want to throw it to you, Marisol. Do you have a fundamental phrase that you would like to share with my listeners this week?
Yes, definitely would be live a life you love.
Yeah, tell me more about live a life you love. How do you apply that in your life?
Well, if there's anything I don't love that is able to be eliminated, boundaries, it gets cut. If there's anything that distracts me from my energy being invested in the things that I love, that gets cut too. And I think it's really understanding that every moment we have the choice to choose to live a life we love or to live a life that we just tolerate. And we're only here for a really short amount of time when you really think about it on like the grand scheme of things. So it's really about taking your power back every moment and choosing the things that light you up, choosing the things that bring you peace, choosing the peace that like the things that bring you joy. Because if you're not living a life you love, are you even living?
Yeah. Yeah. Are you even living for real is just such a beautiful thing to recognize because I don't think we are. I think that there's this detached autopilot. Like, I don't know why everything has to be automatically run these days. But where it's just like, oh, I don't have to drive. Like, I don't, I don't have to, the spaceship is just running itself. And like, you can live that way. But I mean, from my personal experience and from it sounds like your personal experience, it's a pretty hollow existence.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, when you really think about it, I think for me, I feel I live life through experiences. Okay. And there's a quote that's in like the Gene Keys, and it goes back to this whole touching on non-judgment. And I think it really helps open you up to living life as an experiment and experimenting like as much as you can to experience as much. But there is no right or wrong decision. There's just the decision that you make in the moment. And what it is that brings the judgment is our hindsight of looking back on situations with what we know now. But here's the thing, that's not really fair to yourself and not really showing yourself grace or compassion because I'm going to be honest, the decisions I was making 6 months ago versus this version of me now, completely different. And that's because there's been so much growth and evolution. And so, with that being said, at any moment, you have the power to change your life, truly. And it starts with small changes. And I think that, like, back when I moved to Mexico or back when I was doing these big things, like, it was like I feel like society makes it look like you have to do this big freaking leap of change to do something different or to be different or to be, a more evolved version of self. But like here's the thing. It doesn't have to be that way. You can literally start with just saying no. Like if
Hmm.
you don't say no and that's something uncomfortable for you, say no to the people in your life that you normally would say yes to and see how that eventually, compound effect builds up and leads to a bigger change. And I think that's really where I always want to encourage everyone. Like just because I've made these big leaps, that doesn't mean that they didn't come with their own backlash. But now where I'm at in my life, I'm very much so on like slow, sustainable change. Like what changes can I make from a ground up level that really are going to change me as slow as it takes or as long as it takes, but I know that I can maintain that peace and stability in the future. Everyone wants the automated quick fix. I'm telling you, as someone who fell into that, they don't last and they don't work. They may
Yeah.
work for like a hot second, but you're not really getting to the root, so it's not going to last and it's going to be way more painful when you hit the ground again.
Yes. Yes. Avoidance is simply avoidance. Like it's going to circle back. It will come up.
Hmm.
The patterns will come up again. And yeah, we really do have to make the active, conscious decision. And so, with that, what sort of tools do you have to offer for people to, live a life that they love?
Oh my goodness. So I'm just going to be really transparent since I am a sacral generator in human design. And human design always, I respond best to yes or no questions. So I'm just going to ask you to ask me if there is a specific tool that you wanted to ask me about what you've learned so far since my journey, like for a specific theme. What tool would you like help with or yeah, what do we want to address?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to hear how you identify needs. That's something that seems really big and important in living a life you love is being able to raise that awareness around your individual needs. So, what sort of tool do you have to offer with that?
Yeah, so I can actually send it to you. I use this PDF. It's literally just a basic list of fundamental needs. And so what you can do is you can look at this list and it gives you language because here's the thing, what I found is when I show this list to my clients, most of my clients were never asked what they were needed when they were growing up, or even people that I interact with that I can feel have complex childhood trauma. They've never like when you've never asked what you need, you don't know what you need. And it's very hard to identify what you need if you've never even been given the language. So starting off with a list, and you can even just do a quick Google search of like fundamental needs, pull that up and just choose top 10. Choose
Yeah.
top 10 that you want to focus on meeting for yourself and choose like honestly, I'd say top 4 or 5 that are non-negotiables. Maybe the other ones are ones that you know that if you don't get them met, it's okay. But those top 4 to 5, no, absolutely have to be met for you to feel safe, for you to feel grounded, for you to feel like really grounded and safe in living your experience, right? So identifying needs when you've never had the language to do it can be really tricky. And that's where I do say, like, sometimes it is appropriate to work with a therapist first to like do this like groundwork and then come and work with me. Or I do have a lot of clients who work in tandem with me. They have a therapist and they have me as their coach to help them just on that further integration, right? I'd say as a coach, I bring a very like hybrid model, like a therapeutic approach to coaching, but I don't dive into the past. I think one of my clients recently told me, I like what about this, like with you, is I can still identify how I'm feeling, but you don't make me go into the event or you don't make me go into the nitty gritty. You just help me identify what's showing up for me and how I'm feeling and how do we move forward from here. And the reason why I do that is because I don't feel like it's always necessary for us to go back into the trauma. And this actually like comes from a very like, this is crazy, by the way, because believe it or not all therapists are trauma informed or have a specialty in trauma to understand how it affects it. But when you recount trauma, your body doesn't know if it's happening now or later. So you're reactivating the nervous system. And the way we heal is this process called like titration. So our nervous system really can only handle so much. And I've even had clients who come to me post therapy and they're just like super overstimulated. Their nervous systems are just like, like they just activate all this trauma and their therapist didn't take the time to bring them back in. So I think something else I would like to offer is For those of you in therapy or those of you in your healing, when you're feeling really overwhelmed that you want to disassociate or you're just like, why do I just want to keep crying? Like, really take some time to regulate your nervous system, to deactivate yourself. Like, you can do that through like somatic practices, like dancing. Like, you can look up YouTube videos, like, YouTube videos, like, search like dancing to release anger, dancing to release sadness, right? Like, there's tons of tools on the internet. You can work with like a coach like me, you can work with, a therapist, but just someone who understands how much healing trauma is not only mental, emotional, it's also physical.
Yeah, yeah, it absolutely is. I started dancing within this last year and like building a female community here in the desert. And I mean, the amount of trauma that like women hold in their hips, absolutely insane. The somatic practices, it really is something to look into, if you want to. It's just a suggestion, as always. Take a gander if you feel. But, it has been such a good time. It's been so informational and informative to just speak with you, Marisol. I'm so happy to be able to see your beautiful face again and hear your voice and to be able to share your energy and honestly, your love. I mean, I just feel so much love and passion from you every time I speak with you. And so I think more of that light just needs to be shared with the world. So, with that, how can people find you? How can people reach out to you?
Yeah. So if you're interested in playing in my world in terms of coaching, or also I do why I call myself a creative entrepreneur is I do spiritual like website development. So I actually use astrology and human design to help come up with your branding and your messaging. And we create your website together on that. It's really cool, powerful ways to bring your authentic message that your business has to the world. And if you're looking for just a deeper experience when it comes to healing and establishing boundaries and really creating that life you love, I'm definitely a fit for coaching. So you can visit my website. I'll send you the link and all my links for that, Tyler, but it's www.connectwithmarisol.com, and Marisol is Marisol. Or you can follow me on Instagram. It's a mix of personal expression as well as um, content and stories related to what we were talking about today around boundaries and energy levels and just a lot of love. And my Instagram is Marisol. Again, that's Marisol dot Tiana, Tianna. And yeah, that's how you can connect with me for now.
Beautiful. Well, thank you again so much for your time, for your energy. It has been an absolute pleasure to speak with you. And then one more time for everybody with that fundamental phrase for the week: live a life you
Live a
love.
life you love.
Live a life you love.